Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised it has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
And welcome to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey Mozz, so glad to have you. Tonight's episode of The Incredible Hulk is The Snare. Directed by Frank Orsatti, written by Richard Christian Matheson and Tom Szalasi, credited as Thomas E. Szalasi. Season 3, Episode 9, first air date, December 7th, 1979, a date that will live in infamy. Well, not really. This was actually a pretty good episode. David Bennett.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, we'll get to that in a minute. David Bennett, sorry, gotta do the air quotes, is invited by a millionaire to play a game of chess on his private island. The man turns out to be a hunter, and David becomes his prey, with his Hulk form making even more an appealing challenge. Bum, bum, bum.
I mean, yeah, that's the entire episode, really.
Yeah, that is it. That's what happened. Real bottle episode. There are, including to Bill Bixby and Jack Colvin and Lou Ferrigno, there were only two other credited cast members on our IMDb, which include Bradford Dillman, who played Michael Sutton, and Bob Boyd, who was, of course, the pilot, who had one line on here. Interestingly enough, he actually is still working. His last film credit, he was Dad in the short Pirouette in 2011. So good for him. Yes. Always nice when you see people still getting work out there. But I really liked Bradford Dillman, who plays Michael Sutton, and I was looking at him, I was like, I know I've seen this guy before. And as it turns out, he was in a lot of stuff. He was the go-to tall, dark-haired, shady character throughout the 70s and 80s. He was he was in Escape from the Planet of the Apes, as well as Piranha, the original. In the 80s, fans may know him from Falcon Crest, where he played Daryl Clayton. He was also in King's Crossing as Paul Hollister. And, of course, was in Murder, She Wrote, where he played a number of different characters, including Richard Elliston, Carl Dormer, Eric Benderson, Arthur Brent, and Deputy Police Commissioner Bradley Folk. So he was all over the place there. But what I found most fascinating about it, which isn't really the 80s, but struck me as fun, he was also, of course, in Barnaby Jones, which again isn't the 80s, playing the character of Gordon Kingman among several other characters. But what I loved was he was actually in the old Wonder Woman TV series.
Wow.
Yeah, from 1976, Wonder Woman meets Baroness von Gunther, where he played Arthur Deal. His name was literally Art Deal. Which, of course, made me think of our current president-elect, Art Deal.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's it. That's everybody that was in this episode, except for a couple of extras. We open up and basically... And again, this is one of these moments where we're like, David has money. David has money hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
Because he's flying to Miami.
Yeah.
For reasons, and he never really says the reasons. He doesn't say, "Oh, I want to speak to a medical professional," or "There's a person there." It's just like, "Nope, going to Miami."
No, I feel like with his sort of life, at some point you just have to be moving on. That's always like a part of what keeps him safe, I guess, you know? So it was just time.
I get that. But usually, for the expense of a flight, I kind of wanted like, oh, there's the universe, they have this new product they're giving. They have this new formula they're giving to the players at University of Florida called Gatorade.
Oh.
I feel it might be the cure I'm looking for. Something about electrolytes. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yes, but I wanted a little something that we don't get that though. We just get that. No, I'm just a guy. I'm just a moody drifter who can afford. I guess he's flying standby, so it's not like it's like a big expense, but still. Flying in 1979 was not a cheap experience. This was a major cost, even if you're buying off ticket. And but as luck would have it, our billionaire or millionaire Michael Sutton. And of course, this is back in the day when you could just be a millionaire and that was still impressive. Michael Sutton, his plane had to land because it was having some troubles, and so they just happened to meet in the
lounge.
The lounge of this small airport, and then David's flight gets completely canceled. So.
I love the chess sort of being a metaphor everywhere in this. So he notices at first that he's playing the chess game in the newspaper, and he says, "Hey, you're gonna lose because I can already predict the move." So they play a game of chess, and it's an interesting moment where Bennett beats him. And what did you think of his reaction? What do you think he was thinking at that moment when he gets beat?
Oh, I think he was thinking this is a good challenge. I mean. This is very much a.
He was surprised, though.
Oh, well, of course he's surprised because he's not a man who is used to. And of course, the way he gets caught is very, blatant. You're dumb because it's. Yeah. I put you in check, and then now I'm out of check, and I actually now have you in mate. Which and for what it's worth, that kind of a scenario. Usually only happens among amateur players. Because really, if you're really trying to think like 4 moves ahead, you're going to notice, oh, he's got his bishop right there. His bishop's going to take me. And if his bishop takes me, then, he's going to do this. It's like, but it makes for a dramatic scene.
Exactly.
But so the guy, I think the guy's impressed and maybe even a little, now I really have to one-up him. And this is, of course, based on the short story, The Most Dangerous Game, which I want to say that was written by Ray Bradbury. I'm not 100% certain there, but it is one of these things. This is The Most Dangerous Game is one of these tropes of writing, where pretty much every action adventure series is at some point going to do a Most Dangerous Game episode, where they come, they meet the seemingly benevolent, wealthy eccentric, who then reveals his master plan is to hunt humans, because are not humans the most dangerous game, the most clever game? Yes. Yeah, one of these days, one of those guys is going to really make the mistake of picking up just the wrong Moody Drifter, though.
Yeah.
And because he was in many ways he was lucky to get a Hulk. He could have gotten a Rambo. But I did love in the whole thing where and you see him making all the statements like, "So, who's waiting for you? Is anyone you need to call?" Da, da, da.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like in classic, if you are a hitchhiker, don't ever do this fashion. He says, "Nope, nobody's waiting for me. I got nobody. Nobody cares if I live or die. If I disappear tomorrow, who would even know?"
Yeah.
I just say that randomly to you, Mr. Sutton. So they do go back to his private island, and it's like, look, we'll come to my island, you'll relax, and then I'll have my man fly over to Miami tomorrow,
Yeah.
Which is,
I love when people used to talk like that. I'll have my man do this for you. That was just an acceptable way of talking. I loved it.
Yeah, as well. I'm sure people still do from time to time, and I'm not sure if people actually did back in 1979 either. So it's a very eccentric affectation, but this is a very eccentric man, and I think what you might be seeing in that is just this idea that this guy's already a few loops short of a cereal bowl, So they go back and they're playing chess, and the guy basically says, yes, well, I made a killing in Wall Street, and I just decided to get out and retire, and I bought myself an island, which means this guy really made a killing in Wall Street. I don't know exactly what he did, but he certainly bought some. He certainly bought and sold some .com stock somewhere in there, because this is a huge amount of money the guy managed to parlay. But he reveals to David, that basically no one comes around. It's just me. But that's okay. I like living on my own, and it's nice to have someone to play chess with, which is cool. But then, of course, what happens is as they're playing chess, and it's like, and they're 2-2, so they're tied, and Benton makes his opening move, and he pours some wine in silver goblets, and David drinks the wine, and all of a sudden, that's no wine. And yes, he passes out. And that leads us into our most dangerous game scenario, where we find David wakes up and he is in a graveyard with
marked for him.
Well, yeah, one marked for him, but you did notice that there were like 4 other ones marked as well,
Right.
Yeah, I actually should go back and watch it, see if there was any significance to the names, like if those were, producers on the show, writers on the show, the key grip or somebody, That's always fun when you see stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, so, and then there's a tape recorder there, which explains to him, the scenario, I hunt the most dangerous game, blah, 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 and you're going to be fun. And, what I thought was very neat about this is how much of a cat and mouse game this is at the start.
Yeah.
Because he gets there and he goes, oh, you overslept, David. How poor of you. And then, and when David is trying to escape and he's trying to get across this, like, waterfall thing, and, and the guy's just, like, shooting the arrows at him and, like,
purposefully missing him.
Yeah, exactly. Giving it, he's purposefully missing him, because later you see him split the rope on the rope ladder.
Yeah.
While David's trying to climb it, and it's like, oh, okay, this is all because it is all just a game to him. He's just enjoying himself. And
you hear stories about hunters going out. And waking up the first day that they get somewhere, they see a big old buck, but they don't want to take it because, they want the hunt to last long. So they'll let that one go and really have to, it's sort of like you have to work up to getting the kill you want, and then it makes it worthwhile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So as a hunter, you see, I'm glad they sort of injected a little bit of that philosophy into what he was doing as a hunter, too. They kept it true,
Yeah. Yes. It was a really good episode. It was really fascinating how they how he is setting it up, and of course, and you can see him being real disappointed by David. That David is not providing him the support, and David falls into the pit, and you can see he's like, oh, really? You fell into the pit, David? Really? What am I paying you for, David? And of course, what happens when he's in the pit is he's trying to climb out, and all of a sudden, he has his Hulk out.
Yeah, well, he gets bit by a scorpion.
Yeah, well, yeah, that does it. Yeah, scorpion bites certainly are not recommended for the faint of heart. And after getting bit by the scorpion, he hulks out.
Something interesting happens here that I haven't seen in other Hulk outs. I don't know if this is the first time they tried it, but I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Where, like, you see his shirt all of a sudden inflate. Like, they pumped air into it to make it feel like his muscles were growing. They did the same thing on his back. Oh, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. It was so awesome.
Yeah, this is the first time they start doing that. They do that more. You see that. I think they might have done it once or twice with the shoes. We get the shoes breaking out.
Uh-huh.
And this is the first time they've really done it with the actual, like, whole suit. Which is cool. And then, of course, after he has hulked out, and this is what I thought is, like, the coolest thing about it, is there's no confusion on Michael Sutton's point. It's like, oh, you turned into a Hulk. And it's like the first time, I was like, thank you.
I was super excited when that happened, too. I was like, yes, he gets it.
Yeah, and of course, what's great about that is, of course, you now have this guy really excited for David, really happy to have David on the team, because we get to really have this new most dangerous, most wild game. And it's funny because not funny. Well, it's interesting because, of course, David does get back to the house.
Well, yeah, but before that, I think we get a really, really great scene where the Hulk finally gets away, leaving Sutton there all excited, and Hulk is just like, just walking, having a nice walk through the woods. Just enjoying the sunshine and the cold, crisp air. He even sits down and sees a little bird nest with tiny little, and with the gentlest hands, he picked up these little, bird.
Yeah, baby birds.
Chicks?
Yeah,
baby birds.
Yeah, baby bird chicks. Picks up the chicks, puts them back in the nest after he's, like, knocked over a bunch of traps that just were not Hulk ready at all. And, what I got to say in that is, like, Sutton was real lucky that the Hulk didn't come after him.
Yeah.
Because you're almost waiting for that. But, the Hulk lets Sutton go. Oh, I'm sorry, Sutton lets the Hulk go.
Yeah, he's not about that.
Yeah. Well, Sutton doesn't, like, give chase or anything on the Hulk, but he is fascinated on it. And then David turns back, and he makes his way back to the house then. And of course, when he gets back to the house, we see that Sutton has set up these booby traps and has these, audio tapes that play that were clearly made up beforehand.
Yeah.
And I love that fact that they're all made up beforehand. So because of course what's fascinating about that is, like, the Sutton that's talking there has no idea of what a Hulk is, and doesn't realize that maybe this trap he just set might not be at all useful against a Hulk. But David diligently, participates in the situation. He, and it was very cool, because of course Sutton does take his Polaroid picture at the start.
Yeah. And
you see when he's going through and he's looking for the weapons and the things he needs to escape. The crossbow shoots, and it, like, he dodges the crossbow, but it, like, lodges in the wall opposite where all the Polaroids are hanging, and you see the 5 other bodies and David in the middle. And again, that's another thing I got to go back and watch to see how many of those other pictures had the hole in them.
I wonder.
Because if they have the hole, that means that the person didn't die there. If they don't have a hole, that means they died there.
Interesting.
Yeah, creature of habit, if nothing else. So of course, and this is another thing I love in this, is that, when Sutton comes back and he looks through the people, he sees David working through everything, and of course he's got, like, a little locked room scenario where he gets the clue, which is, in the game of chess, I could write a book. My favorite thing is I use the rook, and because he's looking for the clue, and then he goes and he takes the rook off the board, and he sees something's written down in it, and it says, "Oh, that would be much, much too obvious," which I thought was a great little thing. And then on the other side, you see Sutton taking out an old flintlock pistol. You know?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, because of course.
And again, it speaks to like that he takes this as an art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that he doesn't just want to bring down the beast, but he wants to do it in the coolest, most old-fashionedly hipstery way he can. You know?
Yeah, he is definitely a locally sourced Hulk hunter.
Right.
So David does get out, and as he runs away, you know, Sutton is yelling at him, say, you know, bring back the monster, you know, because he's saying, bring it, I want to fight that. That's what I want to hunt, you know. And of course, I'm sure David's saying, you're a crazy man. But that is maybe. Anyway, this leads us to when Sutton decides not to play around anymore. And now, of course, one of the things I thought was great about this scene is David steals the cassette recorder.
Yeah.
Which I didn't understand why he did at first, though we do see why that is.
I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
I
well,
kept thinking.
Because David's, if they want the most dangerous game, David's going to play the game. So we see Sutton. He's got a dozen arrows, and he says, you know, the white are for the hunt, and the black are for the kill. And you see him dipping the black ones in some substance. I'm guessing curare, but possibly just some other highly toxic slime substance that he dips his arrows in. And because it's a very thick, viscous thing, you know, looked a lot like honey.
It looked like they probably used honey. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes to hunt David, and of course, but David sets the trap for him. You know, that's what he uses the recorder for.
Catches him up.
Yeah, because the recorder is him the recorder has him shouting at him and saying how he's a coward. You know, it's not a fair hunt. You know, and all these things. And then of course, he gets there and he realizes that it's, you know, he gets caught in his own snare, and David has gotten away. I'm trying to remember exactly what causes David to Hulk out in that scene. Does he get shot with an arrow?
Well, I mean, no. The guy gets caught. He's hanging upside down off the snare, and then David is about to come grab everything, but he cuts himself off. So David runs, and they have like a little confrontation on top of the hill where he's like, hey, can't go any further. So he's like, so what brings the Hulk out? Is it fear? Is it pain? And so he brings out a whip. He goes, let's try pain. And he starts whipping David on top of the hill. And after about 3 or 4 times, that's what causes him to Hulk out.
Exactly. But of course, in doing that, he makes the very, you know, well, what happens is they do have this fight. You see the Hulk picking up rocks and throwing them. In the mess, Sutton stabs himself with his own deadly arrow.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, he did not have his death arrows properly covered in the quiver, because apparently he's not that. This is one of these things. It's like, you know, kind of when you get into that first scene where he goes check and then David goes checkmate, you see that this is a guy who, as smart as he may be, isn't always thinking about the fact that he could lose at any moment.
Right.
So he's not even thinking that, hey, you know what? If these poison-tipped arrows I'm using might just accidentally stab me, you know, because if I prick my finger, I'm dead. Because he just like makes a little slit on his pant, and you see it, and you see him see it, and you see him realize, oh, I'm going to die now.
See, I didn't catch that. I was wondering why the hell he was so groggy. Like, I know Hulk catches the whip, but I didn't think that was enough for him to be like hurt like that. But I get it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's essentially what happens. So he's got the poison in him, and this is what I thought was fascinating: is he falls off the cliff into the water, and then the Hulk jumps in after him. And I was half expecting, him to live, because it was just a scrape or just a flesh wound, and just to show that that the Hulk showed compassion to this person who was trying to kill him. I thought that would be great, but no. The next scene we see is David filling up the grave with his name crossed out and M. Sutton written on top of it, which of course is telling in its own right.
Yeah, I think honestly the guy and I remember thinking to myself during this episode, like, what is this guy? What is a guy like this really looking for? And the only answer I came up with was he's looking for a good death. Honestly, is I think what he was looking for, and he found it. Every time he gets one of these people to come over here, he's trying to see who can best him. People like that, I think, are always trying to find their limit. What is possible? They're not comfortable with knowing that something was left undiscovered. Like, until I die, I got to be searching to see what my boundaries are. I think that's the kind of person he was. And when somebody finally confronted him with something that was his final, what he was capable of doing, then he could finally rest easy and know he did everything he could.
Yeah. But you know what I think is fascinating about that? Because we see, just prior to this scene, we see two interesting points. First, he goes to a motorboat that we saw earlier, which Sutton conveniently points out to David, that motorboat will take you back to mainland. Yeah, right to the ocean, actually, which, actually isn't that helpful when you think about it. It's like, yeah, okay. But I guess we're assuming that we're not too far from the coast in this private island. But more to the point, it is a he goes to it, and you see him pull out the starter cord and then cut the starter cord, essentially disabling it so that David would not be able to escape if he got to it.
Right.
And I thought that was a real interesting note there. And of course, when David gets to the boat, he sees that there is this other recorder that he then leaves on the dock as it's playing.
Right, but he's so careful about it. It just shows like how sort of in a different mindset he is. Like somebody comes out of prison, they're not used to outside life. He comes in and inspects the hell out of this little contraption before he plays it. He looks underneath it. He's really careful, picking it up and placing it, and his caution was well served.
Oh yes, because of course what you get is you get the final testament of William Sutton, which is that it looks like I've been bested, and to your point, he says, and I assume this was my final hunt, because I do not imagine that you got away without me being dead. I can't imagine myself allowing that essentially. And
he seems gleeful about it,
Yeah, well, because, that's what he's wanted. And he, in his own way, he is this bored rich man who, and, there are these hints at that beforehand where he says, one of the things about being retired is you realize that you have so much time to do it yourself. He doesn't have anyone taking care of things because he just does it himself, because his entire life is just puttering around his mansion and how empty that is. And I think that's just a beautiful statement. And of course, as David rows the motorboat, because there's motor don't work no more, out to sea, and again, probably not the best idea, but whatever. Although if he hulks out during this, he's like, okay, we're in Miami.
Yeah.
That's not going to be too difficult.
Yeah.
So he rows out, and of course the tape recorder explodes, and takes out the whole dock. It was a very interesting thing. Now, on some of them, I'm kind of surprised that David didn't just stay there and it's like, well, I got an island where I can't ever hurt anyone as the Hulk again, and
I'll finally be left alone.
Yes, exactly. But that would have been again a very boring rest of the series. So, but all in all, I thought it was a really good episode. I thought, I really think this is. For one that, it's a mostly silent episode when you think about it, there's not a lot of discussion of what's going on. It's just, David and and this guy, and they don't have dialogue together after the first couple scenes, you know. After that, it's just, you know, David running, and at most you get the other guy monologuing, you know.
Yeah, you'd have to be a pretty sophisticated storyteller to pull that off and make it engaging and interesting the whole way through.
And they certainly did that. Okay, so I think we can agree this was a very good episode. Even without a Jack Colvin.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. You know, it was something that struck me when I was watching this today, and I said, man, why does Jack Colvin get listed above Lou Ferrigno? Lou Ferrigno is in every single episode. And Lou Ferrigno is technically the title character of the episode of the series. He is
the show.
Yeah. And yet Jack Colvin, who is at most gets one scene every couple of episodes, is listed above Lou Ferrigno. Poor Lou. Oh, if I forgot to mention, this episode was directed by Frank Orsatti. For some reason, I don't think I mentioned that. I know I mentioned the writers because I couldn't remember the one guy's name. Okay, Mozz, if people want to talk to you about the Hulk or anything else, where can they find you?
They can reach me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook at Mozz Manzor. It's MOZZMANZOOR.
Awesome. And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, if you like, you can follow me on the Twitters, as the young kids now do, at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Thank you for hulking out with us, ladies and gentlemen. Please hulk out with us again. Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.
Okay.
All right.
Good show, Mozz. I really appreciated that.
Absolutely. That was really fun. I really dug this episode, man.
Yeah, it was really awesome. Okay, I will, I'm going to hang up now. I'm going to save this, and I will talk to you next week.
Next week. All right, man. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Bye.